I wish the image you saw is that of someone in the behind the steering that is under a lot of stress, but that's not the case. Well, I want to talk about post-traumatic stress, and we've come to understand is that trauma is common. It's trauma exposure is common. In fact, on this program, a number of times people have said that parents, many parents, and even grandparents need to outgrow their traumas over the years. In fact, our guest, while we were discussing this yesterday, that he said that many of us need to outgrow our child trauma we went through while we were growing up. In the World Health Organization, World Mental Health Survey, among 68,894 adults from 24 countries across 6 continents, 70.4% respondents reported that they had experienced at least one traumatic event among the 29 types: war, physical violence, accidents, and all of that. People with high levels of trauma exposure could present an increased risk of developing clinically significant post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Conversations this morning will continue with our guest who will join us in a moment, Miracle Ihuoma, who is a clinical psychologist. A moment from now, we'll be able to reach him because, people have said that, the kind of things that we go through in our world as we grow, as we evolve in the time, as we mature, they inform a number of things. For instance, I was just having a conversation earlier today. Why do people who are seemingly comfortable, who seemingly have it good in their lives, why do they tend to have complexes? Why do they tend to be by themselves in ways where you're wondering, why are you insecure? Why are you afraid? What are you afraid of? What is it that you are unsure of? These and several other things we'll be discussing, on this program this morning. And I don't know if Miracle is already on set. Okay, we'll be back with you in a moment to discuss this in a moment. Well, I don't know if music helps to reduce traumatic stress, but Miracle Ihuoma is a clinical psychologist and he joins us this morning. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, sir. It's good to be here.
Yeah, tell us about this PTS without a D.
That's what I'm facing right now. Okay, without a D, post-traumatic stress is actually distress that actually comes after a traumatic event, or sometimes could even be after someone has witnessed a traumatic event, even though they are not the primary or sole participator in that traumatic event. So if somebody witnesses the death of a loved one, or witnesses a fire incident, or even witnesses rape or anything of that sort, it could actually be traumatic for that individual. So post-traumatic is the distresses that come after one has been exposed, from a particular event that they consider traumatic. Yes.
Does everyone react the same to this kind of stress?
No, not everyone reacts differently. Actually, in fact, what is traumatic to one might not be traumatic to another. Let me even give a very typical and maybe simple example. So if two children grew up in a home, and then one of those um, two children grew up in two different homes rather, and one in one home was told about rapture. So he grew up in a religious environment and he was told about rapture, and the other one grew up in another family where they weren't told anything about rapture. They could go to school and come back, see and find no one in the house, right? See an empty house, and then the one who was told about rapture can think that everybody in the house has been raptured. Why the other one can think as an opportunity to play or even do whatever it is they want to do. So that event can become traumatic for the person who was told something about rapture and not traumatic for the other person. So a lot about trauma or post-traumatic stress is dependent on the individual and the circumstance and sometimes the information they have been exposed to before that traumatic event. Yes. So people react differently to trauma.
You know, Miracle, watching the news yesterday, they were showing children who had been through some horrendous experiences. And one little boy, who couldn't have been more than 8, was saying, they killed him in front of me, and I haven't been able to sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I see that killing all over again. How is that kind of child going to grow out of that dream that he keeps having of someone being killed in front of him?
Yes, so that's one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. There are recurrent nightmares. The person becomes startled. The person avoids anything that reminds them or triggers them in relation to the event and things like that. So it is very much related and very much typical of anyone who has been through a traumatic experience or is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. Someone to be able to deal with that incident, they would need to, that's how I would recommend therapy, right? Because in therapy, there would then be help to see that event differently from how they currently do. That is where most recovery starts from, right? So maybe you begin to see that event a bit differently. So say, okay, what is the meaning that was attached to this particular event? And then to begin to change the meaning that individual has attached to that particular event, right? We call it cognitive behavioral therapy because for that event to be traumatic, there is a meaning that was attached to it. It is empowering meaning. So for us to be able to change that, we need to then change that meaning that we have concerning that event to something more empowering. Yes. And also, there is something we call exposure therapy as well, where the individual is exposed, right, gradual exposure to that that event or the thought of it that brings about those traumatic symptoms and experiences.
Sometimes.
So,
my apologies. Sometimes I wonder if it is avoidable because it's the same world that we are, isn't it? But you know, a quick information for our DSTV platform only. It's a live event, which is a commissioning of Kugbo International Market in Abuja. The event is going to be brought to you live on DSTV. As the commissioning of the Kugbo International Market in Abuja is going to be taken live from for our DSTV platform only. So, but you please stay with us, remain with us here on this segment, if you will. And if you have to be redirected, you can go to our YouTube page to continue the conversation. So back to the conversation. You know, I just asked our dear friend, ChatGPT. I said, give me PTSD without the D. And this is what it says. What is it?
Without the D, it's a way of recognizing that trauma changes people, but that doesn't automatically mean they are disordered or broken. It's a shift from viewing trauma reactions as a mental illness to seeing them as normal responses to intense stress.
Can you confirm that, Miracle?
Yeah, come again with that, sir.
Oh, okay. He says, without the D, is a way of recognizing that trauma changes people, but that doesn't automatically mean that they are disordered or broken. It's a shift from viewing trauma reactions as a mental illness to seeing them as normal responses to intense stress.
Yes. So, and I just like to say that a lot of us, if not everyone, has one form of trauma in their life or the other, right? It doesn't have to be a disorder. You don't have to be diagnosed for you to actually be dealing with a particular trauma. As long as you found any particular incident in your life to be stressful or distressing to a point where it affects your values, it affects your beliefs or your view about life generally, that event is considered a traumatic event. So yes, there are things in our life that actually stress us out and can be considered as trauma, even though they might not necessarily be diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder. In fact, for you to be able to diagnose someone as having post-traumatic stress disorder, those symptoms must happen consistently for up to 1 month, right? Right. So if it's anything less than 1 month, for instance, it is called acute stress disorder. Yes, even though it has the same symptoms with post-traumatic stress disorder. So yes, I agree with ChatGPT.
It also says that removing the D invites compassion and connection instead of judgment.
Yes. So really and truly, as much as possible, I think that we shouldn't even judge anyone, right? Because you never know what they are going through or what they have gone through, right? You could see someone, for instance, who is seriously scared of dogs, for example, and then you can become critical to say, I do not judge dog. What is that? Dogs are friendly. Dogs are nice creatures. I have a dog and all of that. But you never know the person's experience with dogs. Maybe the person had a horrible experience with dogs where, they were pursued by a dog or even beaten by a dog. That changes the dynamics of that person. So in a case where the person meets another dog, another friendly or seemingly friendly dog that is not harmful, they would still display the same kind of reflexes of symptoms. The dog was harmful. So it is important that we don't judge people, right? And we are not overly critical of people because you never know what they've been through. You never know the experiences in their lives. And the same way, because just like the popular saying goes, that when you are pointing one finger at someone, it's pointing back at you, to say that even you who is judging, you have a trauma in your life as well. Yes. And if we are it, you would see that there's an area of your life that you wouldn't want anybody else to know about, or where you display certain vulnerability that you wouldn't also want other people to judge you for. So I don't think we should judge people. We should first of all understand, right, that people are doing the best with what they know, and secondly, the fact that people have had different experiences from us, and that has shaped their lives. Just like somebody rightly said, that we are all products of circumstances. Yes, we shouldn't remain prisoners of our circumstances, but we are all products of circumstances. Right? When we were born, John Locke said our mind was tabula rasa. So it meant that our mind was a blank slate. There was nothing written in our mind. But as we began to grow up and to interact with environment, interact with upbringing, interact with significant emotional experiences, we then those things began to write on the slate of our minds and began to form our attitudes, began to form our decisions, our memories, our beliefs, our values, our personalities, as the case may be. And all of those things have what has all come together to make us who we are today. For some people, those things, those building blocks were more favorable than it is for other people. So it's important to understand that if you grew up, for instance, in a home where you had a 3-square meal, there was somebody who grew up in a home where they didn't even they struggled to eat 1 square meal, right? And all of that forms our perception, our view of life, right? For instance, that person can grow up tomorrow, even become somebody who becomes wealthy, but at the same time, they can still be dealing with that trauma. They can begin to save excessively to a point where you are wondering, why does this person hoard so much money, right? They are hoarding so much money because they saw a lot of poverty, and somewhere in their subconscious mind, they are still running away from being poor. So even whether they know it or not, they are unconsciously trying to save so much that they don't even know that they are dealing or grappling with a traumatic situation that has formed, their
has been part of their growing up.
Definitely their view to life. Yeah.
Okay. It seems like you're saying that every one of us needs to go for therapy. But there's something, you mentioned while we were, conversing about this discussion, that you said that it is important for everyone to heal from childhood trauma. Right? Are you still there, Miracle? Oh dear. Well, I'm sure we're going to get him back. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I said in the build-up to this discussion, you talked about healing from childhood trauma. Oh dear. Well, I'm sure that when he comes back, he will jump right into the conversation, because, in the build-up, he was talking about the fact that, every one of us, we grew up with childhood trauma. We grew up with childhood trauma. Though those jokes that particularly MC Larry used to crack said that mommy,
he and his mother.
He himself and his mom
Yes.
sent him on errand. He now just something happens to the pepper he went to grind.
I know that I have died. I have died.
In a sense, he said, I mean, that could be one of those childhood trauma.
Yes.
But
he was always getting from one into the other.
Well, you are a mother, so tell us about this trauma you people give to us.
Well, children are told to do A, they go and do B. Well, they know that there are consequences.
Well, yes.
And Larry's mom, he said his mom used to talk with I. So, okay, they go and visit someone, and they offer him food. And he's so hungry. He knows he shouldn't eat. But instead of looking at, and his mother is trying to tell him,
but before
with
that,
her eyes not to eat.
Before that time, she said the guest will come and say, Larry, eat now. And he will now look at his mom and say, Mommy, should I eat? And the mommy will say, eat.
There's a difference between eat and eat.
Okay. Well, Miracle, if you can quickly speak to that healing from childhood trauma that you talked about. What when you say we need to heal from childhood trauma, what do you mean, really?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
All right. So when I said we need to heal from childhood trauma, I've given instances of people who might be dealing with childhood trauma currently, and a lot of people, right, are actually dealing with childhood trauma, even if they are not aware of it, right? And it is affecting their decisions. It's affecting. Let me even give you an example. There was this particular lady who she went for therapy, and the reason why in fact, in therapy, it was realized that she had issues with retaining monies, right? Whenever she made money at the end of the month, she was going to spend them even before it was 2 weeks into the month. And this was somebody who was making a lot of money. Maybe I think she was even the managing director of a multinational company. She made a lot of money, but these monies never stayed with her. And it was discovered that the reason why that happened was as a result of trauma. Right? She grew up in a family, in an environment where the dad was a sole breadwinner in that home, and single thing they needed was provided by the dad. To the point where even when they needed something as small or as simple as biscuits, sweets, as the case may be, and they go to the mom to say, "Mommy, please, we want biscuit, we want sweet," the mom would say, "Go and meet your dad. Go and meet your dad." So she formed a perception, or a conditioning was actually formed in her subconscious mind that said women were not supposed to have money.
Oh.
It was only supposed to be men. So even when she grew up and started making money, she spent all of that money unconsciously because of something in her childhood that she hadn't dealt with. Yes. That is why, for example, in therapy, we have what is called healing the inner child. Because trapped in a man, in every man is a boy. Trapped in every woman is a girl. Yeah. And the same way people have chronological age is the same way people have emotional age. So someone, for instance, can be 30 years old, but chronologically, but can be 5 years old emotionally. Another person can be 40 years old, but with 15 emotionally. Well, because
Miracle.
at 5 or at 15, as the case may be, that person stopped growing emotionally.
Just a quick question.
Maybe it was that they were raped at the age of 5.
Yeah.
Or they were
just
physically
1 second,
okay.
Miracle, if you can hear me. Give us signs. I mean, you just told us one example, and that's perfect. You don't have to quote any other example, but just give us signs that the person watching right now would know that they need to engage a specialist to help them decode some things, because sometimes people really can't explain why they do stuff, right? So, because some people would have said that woman that couldn't retain money is what the Yorubas call agbano, the spirit of money, spirit of spend it, spend it, spend it, spirit of whenever there is money, what is written on that money is spent. So, but it is so you are saying it is not spiritual. It is something that needs to be healed, that one needs to be healed from. What are such other scenarios that the person watching right now need to know so that their lives can be better?
Okay, so I'll give some of them. If someone is finding it difficult to start and maintain relationships, it is possible that there's a trauma in that person's life.
So it's not spiritual.
If someone right has attitudes, habits, lifestyle that is constantly affecting their relationship with other people, it's possible there's a trauma. If someone has an attitude or habits or lifestyle that is grossly affecting their finances, it's also possible that person is dealing with a trauma. Yes. If someone struggles to keep their emotions in check, it's either they are engaging in an emotional outburst or they are just unable to keep their emotions in check, it is possible that they are dealing with a trauma in their life as well. If there's a habit, if there's an addiction that has stayed with one for a long period of time, and they have tried everything possible to deal with that habit, with that addiction without success, it's also possible that that person is dealing with trauma.
We could go on and on. I'm pretty sure that there are several other examples or experiences that you'd like to share with us. Lastly, the numbers that we have from the World Health Organization's World Mental Health Survey is worrisome. 70.4% of almost 70,000 people reported that they had experienced at least one traumatic event out of 29 types in their lifetime. How many people are aware of this?
Not a lot of people are aware. Yeah, in fact, a lot of people would even tell you that they have never had any traumatic event in their life, or they would say they have never, or they're not dealing with with trauma, or they don't have a trauma in their lives, right? And that's because we have a wrong representation of trauma. So a lot of times people think trauma is only anything that is extreme in nature. Maybe when someone experiences a fire incident, or when someone experience a near-death experience. That's what they categorize as trauma.
Okay.
And that's why they are not even aware that something as simple as the example I gave earlier, about a child who comes to the house, or a child, for instance, in our modern day era, would be threatened with egunu, that that's masquerade now. If you don't do this, I will call the masquerade for you, right? That can put a trauma in the life of that child.
Okay.
That can live with them for a long time.
Okay. Miracle.
Yeah, it is why I think
Miracle.
that.
Miracle, I am sorry, but we've run completely out of time, which means that we need to bring you into the studio again to explore this thing about trauma again. Yeah, thank you very much. Miracle Ihoma is a clinical psychologist, and he joined us via Zoom. Thank you for being with us, Miracle. And that is our show for today. We'll bring you a fresh edition next Sunday, being Palm Sunday. Until then, just be the best version of yourself. I'm Alera Edu.
What are you preparing for Easter? Don't answer that yet until you have. I'm Ayo Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye-bye.